So in this final mini lecture, I'm going to look at some of the concerns that might be raised if you want to take policy that you have analysed in the field of education and you want to get it published, either as a conference paper or as a paper submitted to a journal. And how would you go about that, and what is actually necessary for your route to publication. So, of course, policy analysis in social theory and education is going to, the first thing you'll have to again come back to is your research paradigm, where you're coming from. So you have to ask yourself, are you claiming to be coming from a neutral objective place and you're doing positivistic study from the third person and you're claiming neutrality and you're moving into the literature in that way? Or are you coming from social theory, which is anti-positivistic, which actually debunks the notion that any person can be that neutral and that objective, and you're somehow implicated in the study? And from traditions such as critical pedagogy, cultural studies, critical studies, feminist studies, post-colonial studies, etc. So if you're coming from those, you're going to have to look at what research method will you use. And of course, it will depend on the research question, the topic of interest that you have, and how you're going to actually examine it. So you could use a critical discourse policy analysis, a critical interpretive study, you could use an affirmative critique, and you could maybe use a critical and feminist discourse policy analysis. So there's a number of strategies and methods that you can call on. In this particular mini lecture, I'm going to just look at two, and I'm going to introduce you to a critical discourse analysis through the work of Maggie McClure. And Maggie McClure has a wonderful introduction to this work written in her book on discourse in education and social research, published there by the Open University Press. And she will put some key questions. So, for example, if you're looking at policy on leadership, you might be looking at, in educational leadership, what are the intended outcomes? How is it framed? How is the actual policy framed? What's included in the policy text? What's included in the policy talk? What might be silenced, suppressed, or otherwise overlooked? What are the hidden assumptions that are there in the policy? How is intersectionality dealt with? For example, do you consider educational relational, and intersectionality considers social class, gender, race, ethnicity, etc.? How is that being positioned in the study? How is power and privilege being positioned? And how is it done through language? So critical discourse analysis is more than a study of language. And discourse not only means that you're studying language, but that you're understanding that the language is imbricated and deeply connected to power structures in institutions and in society. And so is it learning then for, as I said, that new, that independent type of smart student, or how is the policy going beyond that? How is it laying out collective responsibilities for the common good? Is it to be a compliant citizen, for example, or is it to be activist and engaged? So the next type of research methodology I recommend to you, one that I very much use myself, is what's called affirmative critique. It says that nowadays any critique of any policy that aims to debunk what's in it and to reveal its hidden curriculum is not even seen as scholarly work. It's almost seen in a post-truth era as just negative criticism, as just actually calling out what's not working. And that's under threat at the moment in a post-truth world. So this lecturer here in Philosophy of Education, Stroene et al., in their recent publication on educational philosophy and theory, give us a new approach to this called affirmative critique. That ties in the critical and the feminist very well, because the feminist studies like, for example, to do the work of critique, but they like to build what are alternatives. not just to say what's wrong with what's going on at the moment, but what alternative can you offer? It goes beyond critique. So it takes the policy and it critiques the knowledge and how it's shot through with power and privilege. It studies it in a scholarly way. It brings named theorists in as a framework that provides you with a powerful explanatory lens to examine the study. But it goes beyond the negative criticism, and it says how to reveal then what might be included and excluded, or the hidden curriculum and who benefits, but actually goes beyond it to offer an alternative. So it's emancipatory and it has advocacy. It tries to bring in some hope and transformative possibility. That would be very much found in the work of Paulo Freire, bell hooks, and all of that work. That idea of that transformative possibility, that actually there is a world, we're in a world that isn't all engineered and decided by anybody, that there is a not yet thought. And that's what always in the academy, that's why one likes to work in academic research, because we are looking for always moving that space out to new knowledge and making new knowledge from the literature. So when you're looking for a route then to submit your journal article, you take your article, maybe join in Ireland, for example, make sure you join the Educational Studies Association of Ireland. You could join the British Education Research Association, the American Education Research Association, attend their conferences, bring the papers into that space, get feedback from them, and then submit them to journals. And I have just a few journals, very suitable journals here for education research mentioned. The Journal of Education Policy, Critical Studies in Education, Discourse Cultural Studies, Irish Educational Studies, or the Journal for Critical Education Policy Studies. All of these journals will require an academically sound piece of work. They will need data trustworthiness. They'll need you to show where you're coming from and reveal what you have found. And if, for example, in any case you get rejected from a journal, then it's kind of dust yourself down and try again and improve the study and put it into another journal. But it does make sense to actually consider that route to publication, because after all your work and your interest and your research interest in the area, it makes sense to actually leave something there for other students, other policy makers. You can influence the policy making world. You can leave something there for others to read and to hop off of and develop and to think with. So think with the theorists and enjoy your research policy world, and as in the way I enjoy doing the work. I've left you some researchers. I would invite you to connect with me if you want any further information about this. And that interest and passion I have for education policy is not only to actually critique the policy, but do it in an affirmative way and to open it out, to always keep policy not equal to practice, to understand it as being a fabulously complex area of study that requires at the heart of it a heart and soul for the sensitivity to people and their culture and their context.